you ready for another midweek mailbag?
Let's do it. Let's pick 3 from the mailbag virtual bag.
That's one way to put it. Hey, we
Okay.
love the interaction from the listeners, and we reward that interaction by answering your questions on the podcast. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we're the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making Locked On Rays your very first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Rays is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Rays. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Rays. And you can email us anytime, lockedonrays@gmail.com. Well, what we're trying to do once a week, middle of the week, is a mailbag episode, mailbag segment or segments. And we have a couple great questions that we'll get from the listeners here. Let's dive right into it. This first one from Joshua Garner. He posits to us, question: could the Rays management be part of the issue with so many of our great pitching prospects? They love their 5 and dive so much, so they make them focus too much on just pitches to get through those 5 innings. What say you two gentlemen?
I think it goes way deeper than that,
Okay.
Josh. I think it goes way before that. The development from the guys in minor leagues. I think this is a baseball shift, not an actual team specific shift towards. It's basically throw your best nasty stuff as hard as you can all the time. And when you get tired, you get tired. I think that's the philosophy now, because they think that is actually going to be the way to win if you just throw out the nastiest stuff, most powerful stuff out every pitch at max every time. It doesn't matter if you only last 4 or 5 innings. So I don't think it's I'm sure the front office is behind them and this philosophy, but I don't think it's race specific. I think it's permeated across baseball. So no, I don't think the front office of the Rays is like the puppeteer of all MLB. I think this is actually a major issue across all teams.
Right. I think although the Rays are part of it with implementing the opener strategy, I think that's certainly what they do with the 5 and dive has permeated through the rest of baseball. But the overarching theme of let's just get guys that throw nasty stuff, maybe don't have a lot of pitchability, but just use the guys that throw, 98 and a slider. They don't know where it's going and roll them out there. And also there's some valid points to this of giving a team that you're facing a bunch of different looks, having them face, instead of 2 or 3 pitchers, having them face 6, 7, 8 pitchers, a different look every time through the order. And I think the Rays are part of that, but they're certainly not the only ones part of that. I mean, bullpenning is now becoming a use throughout all of baseball. And let's also consider this, the Rays aren't like other teams where they're not, not every other team goes out and actively or doesn't really try to bring back Charlie Morton or tries to trade a Blake Snell. And also, you look at the Rays dynamic of pitching staff is as far as starters go, isn't it for the most part, it's like either really young guys or really old guys? Is that what they have for the most part?
So for the last few years, right on the nail there.
Yeah. So it's not like they've got guys in their system that they've been able to work and tweak for 6, 7, 8 years. And, I think, I know it's still early, and part of the, we joke around that, hey, Shane McClanahan hasn't even gotten through 5 innings yet. I mean, this is still sort of an extended spring training with the ramp up period. I think eventually he will be going above 5 and 5 1/3 and 5 2/3. Like there's going to be a day this season where he gets to the 6 inning mark, I would think. Also, the guy that usually goes deep into games, Tyler Glass now, he's no longer part of the equation. Shane Baugh is a guy that we think can go deep into games. He's injured. So that's a couple guys right there. The Rays have traded. It's not like the Rays have a lot of, they also traded Joe Ryan and Matt Liberatore. So
no, don't fall into that. Don't fall into that, because I know that Twitter space has been all like, oh my God,
no,
look at what Joe Ryan.
I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's, as far as these great pitching prospects, who are they? Tommy Romero, is that a guy that you're expecting to go 5 or 6 deep?
No, I think I want to hit on something you said earlier with the different looks. The 3 times through the order penalty, that's a real thing. Just pitchers are going to get hit harder. Pitchers are going to get fatigued. So the 3rd time through the order, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for that pitcher on the mound. And that has just been not proven. Like it is. So that's why the 5 and dive kind of makes sense if they haven't been hit around and they've gotten the particular outs, the 15 outs to get out and go to the bullpen. So that's one of the theories of why they do this. The other one, which you alluded to with saying nasty stuff, Eno Saris put out a great article, I think maybe within this month, where he has this stat called Stuff Plus, how nasty stuff actually is, and Location Plus, how good the location, the command and control is for a certain pitcher. Basically, the thesis is that you would rather have a pitcher with not so good location, command and control, but nastier stuff, because you're going to get whiffs and chases better than a guy who can locate, command and control very well the strike zone, the pitches, but doesn't have nasty stuff. So ergo, that's what is happening. You're throwing guys out there with really nasty stuff, going max at every pitch, avoiding the 3 times through the order penalty, and that's why you get the kind of Rays baseball that we have seen lately.
Yeah, and also, we can't fault the Rays for having terrific bullpen construction and how they deploy those guys and working the matchups to the best of their ability. I do think there's going to be a point where maybe the rubber meets the road, especially if guys in the bullpen keep going down with injuries, be it Pete Fairbanks and JT Chaubois and so forth. But and I don't know how much of this is just something that, I think off the top of my head, is if there is this ethos and philosophy out there of, okay, you're never really going to have much of an opportunity to get beyond 5 innings. It's basically going to be 4 1/3, 4 2/3 and go. You wonder if pitchers within the organization are thinking, well, why am I going to invest the time and effort to develop and hone and craft a 3rd and 4th pitch? If they're not going to invest in me to let me spread my wings, why am I going to in turn go and really put in that extra effort if they're just going to deploy me in a certain way?
That's a valid point, and I'm sure that some pitchers might have that go through their head. But then again, let's red team this. Who has the most pedigree and reputation of really good developmental of a pitching factory? It's the Rays. Right. So also, when you have those thoughts in your head, you're like, well, but they have been really successful with other guys that might not have my stuff, that might not have my location. Again, these guys are competitors, so they think that they can do it better than others. So when that thought enters their head of like, why should I do this? Why should I do that? When they look around and say, well, it's because they've been successful, so I should maybe listen. I think that gets eroded a little bit, and they get back on track. Again, the pedigree, the reputation is there for the Rays and their developmental of really good pitching throughout the years. Since 2008, they've been really on it. So I understand that human, question of like, why should I do this? But I think that gets eroded rather quickly.
Yeah, I just think that, and I know why Josh is bringing up this question, but just look at the dynamic of this current roster with the pitching staff. Who do you really trust on this rotation right now to go beyond 5?
Honestly, Rasmussen was the first guy to do it against the White Sox on what was it, on Friday? So he's the first guy.
He was lucky that they weren't playing in July in the Windy City instead of April. Just saying.
So yeah, no, 100%. So he was the first guy after what, 7 games. It's a different brand of baseball. But again, I don't think we should just say, well, this is what it's going to be, baseball now. Again, 2022 is odd, just like 2021 was, and just like 2020 was.
Yeah.
Because this time around, the spring training was cut short, and so April is kind of extended spring training. That's what we're dealing with.
Right.
Every time you're watching race baseball, because you're a race fan, because you're listening to Locked On Race and you're subscribing to that YouTube channel, you got to know they're going to baby them for the rest of April. That's what we're going to have to deal with, quote, on air quotation. That's what we're going to have to deal with, is the babying of starting pitchers.
And maybe even longer than April, considering all the guys that have gone down with injuries on the pitching staff. Like maybe it's like, maybe let's... Patino's gone down. Yarborough's gone down. This guy's gone down. This guy's gone down. Let's really be careful with all of this. So good question from Josh. I hope that answers it to some extent. Again, I wouldn't expect the Rays to suddenly, have a bunch of James Shields in that rotation, but it's, the dynamic of the pitching staff. They're, I go back to it. Not every team just sort of willingly moves off of Charlie Morton and a Blake Snell. If those guys were part of the equation, and Tyler Glasnow was healthy, I think you'd see a lot more. Oh, okay. It's cool to see that guy going 6 1/3, 6 2/3.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. What else do we have in the mailbag there?
This next one is from Cody Glazer. He says, I loved his subject line. He goes, please talk me off the ledge, mailbag in parentheses. He says, hey, Locked On folks, I did exactly what you all said not to do and brutalized myself by watching most of the Oakland series. Please talk me off the ledge if you can, but I'm just not jazzed about our offense. Wander, Bilal, and Randy are going to be what they're going to be, but I don't think the rest of our lineup scares anyone. How far can we possibly get with Harold Ramirez as our number 3 hitter? And with our constant pitching injury woes, are we about to get 4th place this season? Please tell me I'm wrong. Thanks for the great pod, Cody. Well, first of all, Cody, thank you so much for writing to us and for listening. And I know you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, so thanks for that. What do you think about what Cody's saying? Are we just depending on what Wander, Randy, and Bilal are going to be for the rest of the season? Does anybody else scare you in this lineup if you weren't a Rays fan?
I mean, to some extent, I think it's way too early just to say that, hey, the Rays are going to finish in 4th place in the division. Like, again, this is a 162-game season. This is not a 60-game season. But let's be frank. Let's be honest. Let's be upfront about all of this. The Rays did and no longer have 3 all-stars on their position player or lineup, whatever you want to say. No Joey Wendell, no Nelson Cruz, no Austin Meadows. I expect, and I think we've already started to see, a step back from Mike Zunino. And I think that the Rays were sort of understanding and realizing, yeah, we're going to lose some thump in the lineup. So let's really try. Let's make a legit case to try to land Freddie Freeman. I think that was all part of the equation, because if they landed Freddie Freeman, they would be extremely in a much better place. Now, I also, as you like to say, your red team phrase, which I don't even know if I know what that means. Is that like a political thing?
And well, I saw it from. Did you ever watch that HBO show called Newsroom?
I've heard of it, but I think I might have watched an episode. Never really watched
Jeff
it.
Daniels. It's really good, and it's about a newsroom. And so what they say is basically when you bring in an idea to like a news whatever, there's a red team that needs to poke holes into your story and see if you have the evidence to back it up. Basically, you're the red team. You're poking holes at that story. Devil's advocate would be probably a good synonym.
Okay, understood. And look
at the things you learn on Locked On Rays podcast, people. It's not just about baseball. We give you entertainment and little trivia, things like that.
That is very interesting. And again, I think it's almost unfair to compare what the Rays did in 2021 to this season. 2021 for the Rays offensively was historic. They finished 2nd in all of baseball in runs scored. They were tied for 6th in home runs. They were 10th in OPS. that doesn't the Rays aren't really known for that generally. So I think there's naturally going to be a step back in addition to no longer having Cruz, Meadows, etc. And this you look at the dynamic of this team right now, you have rookies and new players trying to find their footing. So there might be some learning on the job where, a Taylor Walls, a Harold Ramirez in April might not be the same as in, September or August. And I'm not trying to make excuses here, but the Rays schedule to start the season, they start at the Trop, which isn't the most homer-friendly ballpark, and then they go to the Windy City in April, where balls aren't necessarily flying outside the ballpark like, Yankee Stadium or Coors Field or something like that. So that's I think the offense the offense is absolutely going to take a step back, but at the end of the day, it's all about runs scored, I would think. And I think the Rays are going to be able to score, definitely not finish second in the league in all of baseball in runs scored, but they will find a way to play to cross guys by using their athleticism more with the extra base hits, taking the extra base, stolen bases, eking out infield singles, so on and so forth. I just don't think the power numbers and the slug numbers will necessarily reflect that.
I hope if you're a Rays fan that you enjoyed the hell out of 2021 in that offense, because again, historic, the best that lineup has ever been, the thickest, the deepest lineup we have ever seen just by their performances and names alone. 2021 was very, very special. 2022 will be taking a step back. Now, is it going to take a step back to the offenses of 2013, 2011, 2014? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be better than that, but we should be expecting a drop off in production. Again, when you take out a Nelson Cruz and you take out an Austin Meadows and you take out a Joey Wendell from the equation, and you're putting Taylor Walls, Josh Lowe, and Harold Ramirez, yes, I'm expecting good things from those three guys, from Harold, from Josh, and from Taylor. I think they're going to be good major league players. The thing is, can their combined production equal what Joey Wendell, Austin Meadows, and Nelson Cruz would have done? And the answer, I think, for most Rays fans, at least in 2022, should be no.
Hell no.
I don't think so. I don't think, right? Like, I honestly want to put a Twitter poll on this because I feel like nobody's, somebody likes to play contrarian. So they would be like, yes, I do expect more from Walls, Josh, and Harold.
Yeah, I think we know Austin, who that would be too.
Wendell, guys, there's just, and that's okay. And that's okay. I think, like you said, they're going to be a little bit more athletic. They're going to be a little bit more fleet of foot on the base paths. And that might be a different kind of run production that they're going to be doing in 2022. But yeah, Cody, just like Kevin said, too early for fourth place anxiety and fears. We haven't even played 10 games, so it'll be fine.
As of this recording, this will be dropping midweek. But again, Josh Lowe right now might be a different Josh Lowe when he has 350 at-bats under his belt.
Yes.
That's something that has to be considered. These players just aren't stagnant, stay the same, especially young players. Like Wander Franco, again, those first couple of weeks in the season into now what he is, it's night and day. Not saying Josh Lowe's going to have that transformation, but it takes time. Just like, and I know we joked about it on the prop bet episode. Like it's very hard for a rookie player to have an OPS above 770. Now I know Josh Lowe very well could do that, but that's I just think that's here. Go ahead.
Two things here. 771 was Nate Lowe's 2021 OPS. I looked that up and I was like, maybe that was actually a really good prop bet because I want him to have that number as a brother. Like, I'm going to be better than my brother.
Was he an everyday player? Was he being used as an everyday player?
Last year, I think Nate was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he had a regular player in 2021 means a whole different thing than when we grew up. That's one thing. The other thing is I want to put you on the spotlight in your personal life right now. Not too much, but have you ever been new at a job?
Yeah.
You have.
Absolutely.
Is it odd when you are there as the new guy in the first month than when you're there for 5 months at that job?
100%, because it takes some learning, and it doesn't take me 2 hours to do this thing that normally should only take 5 minutes. So
Exactly. That's
yeah,
the same thing that Josh Lowe is doing, guys. So just
yeah,
it takes some time. Taylor Walls takes some time. Harold Ramirez takes some time. Just we have to be patient. We
yeah,
shouldn't have been patient last year, honestly. We should have been expecting a lot from those guys, and they delivered because
right.
they had been there for a while. But with these guys, we have to, put the brakes a little bit and just exercise that virtue called patience.
Yeah, and I know it's disappointing because the Rays struck out on Freddie Freeman and they lost 3 All-Stars, and then you look at the division and you see that the Blue Jays add Matt Chapman and the Red Sox add Trevor Story and the Yankees add Josh Donaldson. It's like the Rays added Harold Ramirez. That's what we did. Ryan Healy, who they ended up releasing in
Yeah.
spring training. So and then who was the other guy? Luke Raley. So that's who they try to go to bat for. So anyway, I get it. I think that the Rays, they will be fine in the end, but just hey, savor that 2021 season. Savor those
Yeah.
100 wins. Look back at those highlights, if you will. And if the Rays offense continues to reel through the first couple months, there's something called the trade deadline where the Rays could go out and make a play or two. So that's always a
Which they
possibility.
felt like they needed to do last year with Nelson Cruz, and they did it, and they pulled the trigger. And I know some people are like, "Oh, well, guys, that was a good trade. That was a
it was a
good
great trade. It was an awesome trade. I mean, I don't fault them at all for that. It's always hindsight 2020. Well, now that the Rays have a bunch of pitching injuries, now it's like where's that Joe Ryan character? So no, I get that. I get that totally. Okay, this last question that we'll go through today. This is an interesting one. Gotta maybe give me some reprieve on the name pronunciation here. Alahan Lemon Kuglo, I guess is that maybe the best way to put it there.
Yeah.
Alahan from Istanbul. See, we're worldwide on the Locked On Rays.
We're just like Pitbull, man. Worldwide, Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah. I'd love to know what time Rays games start in Istanbul. What the time frame is for that?
7 hours, 8 hours, maybe. So
Okay,
that would be what, 7 plus 7, that'd be 14. So what, 2 a.m. in the morning? Oof.
Better work the night shift there, or check the highlights or something like that. But anyway, Alahan says, "Hi guys, hello from Istanbul. Longtime listener, first time question asker. I come to think the Rays this season seem to lack power." Yeah, we discussed that. Is it because shifts are banned and management wants the team to be more athletic in order to help defense? ?
Is it Alihan? Alihan?
You're asking the wrong guy. I have not been outside the country.
I'm going to go with Alihan.
Turkey blood in me, actually, but
oh, there you go.
That's
I'm going with Alihan. Thank you so much for listening to us, man, from all the way in Istanbul, Turkey. That is one of the coolest things that we've gotten from listeners around the world.
Fun fact, it's actually easier to get to Istanbul than to drive across the bridge to get to St. Pete. I've heard that from multiple people.
I didn't know where you were going with, but I'm glad that was the plot twist.
Yeah.
Alihan, I do think that they're going a little bit more athletic, and we had seen that happen since like 2017, the draft, the 2018 draft, and we had talked about it since the beginning of this podcast, which was established on June 10th, 2019. We were talking about they were going a little bit more into athletic guys, athletic drafts. There was a glut of middle infield guys, so I now think that that's where they knew that the banning of shifts would happen, and they wanted to get more of these types of players. Now, the shift is not banned this time around. That'll happen next year. So it doesn't make sense, that the power is not there because of the shifts this year. But it'll be really interesting to see how the offense of a lot of teams that are depending on that'll shift. But I think honestly, it'll just gain guys like Joey Gallo, Austin Meadows, Brendan Lau, a little bit more of an oomph in their offensive numbers, because there won't be a guy playing short right field anymore. And
Right.
so that those hits are going to start dropping. You're going to see offense rise a little bit more in those guys. The problem is that the guys the Rays don't have those Joey Gallos. They don't have those types of players. So I wouldn't just hope till next year to see that offensive prowess work that way for the Rays. I don't know if you see it the same way, Kevin.
Question. Do you think part of this rule change of banning shifts is sort of like a plea, or it's a way to appease the big market teams that have the Joey Gallos and the Giancarlo Stantons, the high price franchises that pay for these big sluggers in free agency to say, hey, come on, help us out here? Is that part of it? And also to, obviously get more action within the game, but it seems like this is almost a anti-Rays rule to some extent.
I'm glad you said that, because it's exactly what that feels like. It's exactly what that feels. Just like it felt like when they said, "Oh, a reliever can only pitch to 3 guys and then can get taken out."
And
So it seemed a little bit against what the Rays were trying to do. And you know what? In the next CBA, when they said, "Well, a starter can a pitcher who starts a game must."
Complete 5 if they don't complete 5, and then they lose their designated hitter, something along those lines.
Something along the lines, so that you don't use an opener and then you don't use a bulk guy. Like, it does seem like they would appease the bigger markets that are paying for the Joey Gallos and names like that. Now, I would rather MLB not be so poignant to their big markets, but I think we have enough ground or legs to stand on when we say that MLB usually does want to appease their bigger markets, because that's where their revenue is coming from the most part. I mean, MLB is not getting extra super uber wealthy because of the Tampa Bay market. No, they're getting uber super wealthy because of LA, Chicago, New York, that stuff, Boston.
At the end of the day, MLB and all the stakeholders within that organization would much prefer that the Yankees are in the World Series compared to the Rays being in the World Series as far as eyeballs and revenue.
You know why?
The way it is.
Look at the postseason odds. It bothers us Rays fans. You're like, how are the Yankees always like, oh, the odds to go to the World Series? Well, they hype it up. And not only that, because there are more Yankee fans. So Yankee fans are going to push for their team. So because there are more, then they're going to push more of that narrative. And that's how it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what it is.
It's also why, if you look at the national television schedule, a game on ESPN or MLB Network or whatever, it's the Rays very rarely get picked, even though they might be the best team in the league. It's always going to be the big market teams, because you're trying to grab that foothold of the widest audience possible, which I understand. I get it. Like, it is what it is. Like, it's smart business practice. I mean, I would preferably, want to see different teams each week on, the Sunday night baseball showcase on ESPN, but I get it.
I think that's hopefully what's going to come next year, when the schedule gets a little bit more balanced and you don't have to play a team 19 times. So they might not have to show a bunch of, Red Sox Yankee games on ESPN. Mm-hmm. But before my blood boils through my skin, talking about big markets, just for a couple more minutes, I want to talk about that Apple TV game. Were you able to watch a couple innings on it, or just clips?
I would love to save that though for our Monday takeaway episode. We're kind of recording the episodes in reverse order. So
look at that. How organic is this pod, people? Okay, I like it. I can't wait.
Question though. To Elahan's question, is the idea of the Rays racking up athletic, contact-oriented middle infield prospects in advance of banning of the shifts as sort of a way to say, okay, you ban the shifts, that's why we need guys super athletic guys that can cover more ground and more range without having to rely on the shift.
Exactly, because let's say that this is what the banning of the shift rule will be, Alihan. So let's say, which we don't know, but if it's like 2 infielders have to be on the dirt on the left side of second base, 2 infielders have to be on the right of second base on the dirt. So what you would do if you need to actually shift a guy, well, maybe if you put that shortstop right next to the bag on the left-hand side, shift a Brandon Lowe a little bit towards first base, Ji-Man Choi or Yandy close to the line. Yeah, you're saying, well, there's going to be a big space between where Wander Franco is and Brandon Lowe is. Well, if you got athletic guys like Brandon Lowe and Wander Franco, they can actually get through those balls a little bit easier than, guys that might not be as athletic in second base and shortstop. So that's exactly what I think. Like, that's why they've been drafting middle infielders, because those guys, if they're not going to stick around there, then they could be a third baseman. They could be a first baseman. They could be a corner outfielder and give you some athleticism. Yeah. So I think that's exactly what they've done. Like they're trying to gap that change from the banning of the shift.
Yeah. And the unintended consequences of this rule change of banning the shifts. I mean, we do realize that these pitchers are professionals and very advanced, and they can manipulate how they're throwing, where they're throwing, to how the defense is set up. Said, okay, you're not shifted this way. You're playing more straight up. Okay, I'm going to pitch this way to make sure the ball gets closer to you. Another thing, too, is as pitchers are throwing harder and harder and harder, there might be fewer guys that have the ability to pull the ball. So the balls might just go right to the defender as it is without having to utilize the shift. So that's a couple of things that, going down the line, it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out and what the quote unquote ban shift actually entails.
I hate the idea of banning the shift, but even though I hate it, I can't wait to see what it actually is and how it'll increase production offensively. Because honestly, I hate the idea, but if it's going to increase production, offensive production, you got to do it. You have to do it. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a change when it's not happening. That would be insanity. Yeah. For those folks that
I also just wonder too, if you ban the shift, maybe that causes like more activity on the bases to go down where guys aren't playing straight up. If you have 3-4 infielders on one side of the field, if guys are playing more straight up, then guys are less prone to trying to steal that bag as opposed to a shortstop or a second baseman or a third baseman being out of position. So it'll be really interesting, like I said, to see how it all shakes out. So,
but bigger bases, so maybe they do end up stealing more.
So they're just like throwing. They're really going deep into this. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, this is really trying to
change the complexion of everything. All right. Thank you for those questions, and remember, we love these types of questions. You can email us, lockedonrays@gmail.com. You can send us a Twitter DM, an Instagram DM, voice memo. We're big fans of the voice memo as well. So keep them firing. And if you've already asked a question, we don't care. You can ask another question. We love getting questions from new listeners, from people that have never reached out to us, from people that reach out to us all the time. It's a free-for-all, like we like to say. So, all right. Thank you for making the Locked On Rays podcast your very first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. That is also free and available on all platforms. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.